My introduction to the Ryerson University's Students' Union was in April of 2023. I was darting back to class, coffee in hand, when someone approached me, offering tickets to some show. All I had to do was vote for some slate called Revolt. I declined and went on with my day, thinking nothing about it. But as time went on, I began to wonder, did someone try to buy my vote? Who these people were and why they approached me is no simple story. So we'll have to go right back to the beginning. In the early months of 2019, the student-run news agency called The Eye Opener reported that the Ryerson Students' Union racked up credit card charges totaling in the thousands. Here were some of their expenses.
Personal items that were spent on the organization's tab.
LCBO, shisha, all of these things that obviously were so wrong.
Food, drinks, clubs of various sorts.
They did things that didn't need to be done. They installed 4 TVs that we don't know what to use for. Things that just, as if money was no object.
It was a lot of personal spending on the organization's credit card.
So that's called embezzlement, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, some might call it fraud. And it was one of the reasons originally with Ganesh, the expenses there, the $250,000, or I would argue more because you talk about damages to the organization's reputation, etc.
I think it was him and another executive, and a board member realized something was up, and he made a motion to investigate, and they found out all of these things come up, more than what they expected.
The charges were so severe that Ram went to court, right? There was the whole court thing. CBC wrote some articles about it, and when it became a really big publicized issue, it was no longer just a hinky-dinky little university problem. It became in the public eye.
After the initial media uproar, Ganesh and several other members of the RSU were impeached. However, this was not the end of the RSU saga.
The school obviously saw something like this being written about in global news and everything like that, so they decide to present us with a court case, and they serve us to not recognize the student union anymore. And at that time, they were withholding all funds.
Needless to say, I'm sitting here a member of the TMSU, so the Students' Union still exists. So try as they might, the university can't get rid of the organization, even though they really still, I'm sure, don't like us.
In the election following after Ram's impeachment, Ali Yusuf, a former vice president and friend of Ram, won the presidency, succeeding him.
Because that situation was so horrific that it really didn't take much for somebody to be seen as, a bringer of good news.
If you read far enough in the articles, you realize that there was a pattern. It was kind of like the same people, from one group to the next. It was, there was a connection.
Following the election of Ali Yusuf, all permanent staff for the Ryerson Students' Union, now called the Toronto Metropolitan Students' Union, are fired. As for the investigation of Ganesh, it's conveniently swept under the rug. In 2022, after years of controversy and scandal at the TMSU, many students, such as Marina Gerges and Gus Cousins, decide to run as independent candidates. In the election following, this saw them win in a landslide over the endorsed slate led by Santos called Adapt.
Sid got absolutely annihilated in the polls. Marina won in a landslide. It was not close. I had also won, as it turned out, by way more than I thought I would have.
In the spring of 2023, it was time for another election. With many independents rerunning, including Gerges and Cousins, Santos, the former leader of the defeated Adapt slate, forms a new slate called Revolt. During this election, he forms a plan to defeat the popular independents. Santos conspires with his slate members to bribe the TMU students with various tickets to live shows and movies, as long as they vote for him. The result? An overwhelming victory for Revolt. However, the outcome isn't what he expected. While canvassing in the SLC, Gus Cousins is approached by one of these ticket sellers.
There's a couple things to talk about there. One was random people in the SLC who weren't students, who were essentially bribing people who didn't know any better to vote a certain way and handing out free comedy club tickets. At one point, was walking around the SLC, and I had stumbled across one of these people handing these out, and I played the part of, oh, I'm just a student. I don't know what's going on. Like, tell me, oh my God, I get a comedy club ticket for voting this way? Like, what's all this? So I played that part, and I actually got one of the little, like, voucher slips. I didn't know what I was gonna do with it at the time, but I got one, and I'm like, this is hard physical evidence I have in my hand right here of someone trying to bribe me. So I went home, and I called up the comedy club, and he's like, yeah, like, you can now, it's a ticket. And the admittance of it being a ticket to something meant that it was a bribe. You had these people, bad people running, who eventually got the axe totally, right? They looked at them eventually, and they broke so many rules and election bylaws that they said, you guys are so full of shit that you guys aren't even allowed to run, and you aren't even allowed to apply for these positions. The elections were obviously to the point where they had to say, we can't run these. Like, these are silly. The votes cast were silly. The bribery was silly. None of this made any sense, and none of it was remotely legal.
Bribery wasn't the only shady thing going on. Just prior to the election, it was reported from the Eye Opener that Marina Gerges was wrongfully set up for a drunk driving charge.
It was the Dave concert at History, I believe. I was told that there are tickets for executives. I said I wanted to go at the time. When the day came, I didn't want to go anymore. So I get dressed fast and I drive down, and one of the staff members stays on the phone with me the entire way downtown to ensure I came, I guess. I don't know, we weren't close. So by the time I got there, the concert had been done. People were walking out. The staff member, that was on the phone with me said, well, do you want to go out? You're already out here. And one thing led to another, and I found myself, at Laval. He wanted me to drive him home. We go to Laval, the bar had already closed, and I wanted to get a drink. He comes out of nowhere with a drink in hand. I said, where did you get this? I thought the bar was closed. He said, don't worry about it. Very scary stuff, because by the time I drank it, I was really tired walking back to the garage where my car was. Like, unusually tired. So when I got to my car, I just went into the passenger seat and I wanted to sleep. He ended up driving my car to Brampton, and I found myself in front of his house in Brampton. Obviously afraid, not knowing this person well, not knowing what their intentions were. I was like, I need to leave, I need to go home. Like, I had just woken up, startled. This person's driving my car, my brand new car. Nobody drives my car. So I did drive back, and somebody had been following me, as they said in their statement. They were following me, and it was obviously it was very late or early morning, however you want to look at it. They followed me, they called the police on me, and I saw their statement, and I saw their age, and I saw where they lived, and I began to get worried. I'm like, that's when I realized, when I read the statement, that it was much bigger than what I thought. It was not just one person involved. It was not just even the other person who offered the tickets. It was an entirely, it was a calculated plan, and it was obvious.
There's proof of all of this. I'm not sitting here, talking about stuff that I just want to believe or that I think may have happened. This is all out there. Like, the amount of time I've spent reading through these things, talking to people, having phone calls, Reddit, God help me, Reddit.
The way they were operating to the public eye showed me that something was being hidden on the inside.
The connections are all there. The social media is an awesome place to find information, man. It really is. Sid came after Ali Youssef, came after all the problematic people before him.
I mean, whether you look back from 2016 and onwards, and you look at who took office since then and who their connections are, that's when I'm like, okay, they're involved.
They're all the same problem. They're all the same problem. Different people, same problem.
At the time of recording, everything said is still being disputed in court. The TMSU has filed lawsuits against several former members and executives. We reached out to some of the defendants' lawyers. All declined to comment. This story is still ongoing.